Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Amanda Lamb. In today's deep dive conversation with Five on Your Side's Keely Arthur, we're going to talk about the road to recession. Are we on it? And if so, how will it impact the triangle? Welcome, Keely. Thanks for being here. So you did a recent report where you spoke to 12 economists. Now, I'm pretty sure they didn't agree on everything, but I understand they did agree we are not in a recession right now, correct? What did they say about that?
That's right. And on top of this, we interviewed people just randomly in downtown Raleigh who really kind of feel like a lot of them felt like we are in a recession. But the economists, the experts who study this all the time, said we're not in one. 75% agree we are not in a recession right now. But, they definitely said that this could be something that we are going to face in the future.
What are the indicators of a recession? What do they look at to say, oh, this means we're in a recession?
So the general rule of thumb is 2 consecutive quarters of GDP, so gross domestic product decline. Gross domestic product is the total value of goods and services within the country, within the U.S. We have had 2 consecutive quarters of decline, but we've had so many other things right now that signal a strong economy. So we have really low unemployment. We have people spending a lot still despite inflation. We have small business investment, all these other things that normally signal a really strong economy. So they're kind of counteracting that 2 consecutive quarter decline.
So would that be here in North Carolina or across the country?
This is across the country. We know that North Carolina actually is in a much stronger position overall. The Triangle, Charlotte, and other places. We've seen a lot of investment in counties that we weren't really maybe talking about a lot before. But overall, across the country right now, we're seeing still unemployment low and lots of consumer spending.
And I know one of the things when you turn on the news and they talk about recession, one of the things they always talk about is personal spending. And they say, wow, are people actually going to the grocery store and buying the same amount of food? Are they going on vacation? Are they patronizing retailers? How do personal spending habits play a role in combating inflation?
Well, they can combat it and then they can create more of inflation. So something that would inflate the economy more is when you panic buy. You think, oh my gosh, the price of this good that I love so much is only going to increase more in the future. I'm going to buy a ton of it right now. What that does is that shortens supply, it increases demand, and then the price of that good can be hiked even more because people are still buying it. What you can do to offset inflation is, I know people kind of bash Starbucks a lot, but it's because Starbucks costs a lot and it's costing a lot more right now. So what you can do is say, I'm not going to pay $6 for this iced coffee, and instead of making that your weekly ritual, you just make it a treat once a month. And then that shows Starbucks, that shows other companies that consumers are curbing their spending, thus they're going to lower their prices.
So we can actually play a role, is what you're saying.
You can.
In preventing a recession in a way.
You really can. And we just, for Five on Your Side, did a grocery prices story, and we bought the same 5 items. So chicken noodle soup, frozen vegetables, milk, bread, eggs. Same items, and in a lot of cases, the same brands. We went to 5 different stores. Aldi was the cheapest. It was $8 for the same items. And then Dollar General, surprisingly, was $13. Walmart, Food Line, Harris Teeter were somewhere in the middle. So you can shop around. You can be smart with your own dollar and kind of on that very base level impact your own budget.
Did you find that people you talk to, not the economists, but the regular people, are they doing that? Because I find that I buy the milk at the store that's the most convenient when I'm doing my errands or driving home from work.
They are if they feel that they're at a breaking point. There are some people right now that are not feeling their budgets as stretched or worried about their retirement accounts. People who are worried about things like that or just have less money to play with are starting to change their habits. At least that's what I'm hearing from people. Had I asked that question maybe 2 months ago, they would have answered like you just did.
Gotcha. So it's hard to get 12 people to agree on anything. And there was some division on whether or not we're on the road to recession. One economist you spoke with said we'll probably see one in 2023, but it'll be mild. I mean, what was the majority sentiment from the people you spoke with about whether we're going to have one?
If we're going to have one, and a lot of people think that we are going, it's going to get worse. I say that, I don't want people to panic before it gets better. And we think that, and we, as in the economists, believe that this is going to happen next year, maybe early next year, maybe a little bit down the road. The reason for this is interest rates. The Federal Reserve keeps increasing interest rates because they're trying to tamp down on inflation. And when interest rates are higher, there's less money for you as a consumer to spend, and therefore you're not going to be buying as much, and that's going to kind of cool inflation down. When that happens, and we're expecting the Federal Reserve to continue to do this throughout the year, people are going to have less money to play with. That's going to slow consumer spending. That's going to slow business investment. So you're going to see the economy start to slow way down compared to where it is right now, and especially maybe the past 6 months.
Gotcha. We will be right back with WRAL reporter Keely Arthur, who spoke to multiple economists about a potential recession. After the break, why the triangle may be uniquely qualified to handle a recession. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm talking with WRAL 5 on Your Side reporter Keely Arthur about her recent in-depth reporting about whether or not we are headed for a recession. So, Keely, if you're like me, you hear the word recession, you feel like, oh, there's nothing I can do, so you kind of tune it out. But the beauty is, and we touched on this a little bit in the first half, there are things we can do, and what are some of those things that can help us weather a recession, especially here in the Triangle?
So, yeah, I talked a little bit about kind of daily spending habits, but some of the other things that the economists recommended personally would be things like just kind of pushing your retirement back a little bit. If you're somebody that's in the job market right now, you shouldn't, or looking for a job, you really need to get the job. Stop shopping around and stick to it. And then in regards to the triangle, things that make us a little bit better off, we are such a diverse economy. In a recession, things like construction and manufacturing get hit really hard. But because the Triangle's economy is really focused on kind of advanced manufacturing, we have biotech, we have all these other different things. We have the universities. Those are things that traditionally have been hit not as severely when we enter into a recession in the country.
And I mean, I look out my window and I see a crane just about on every corner putting up a high rise. So growth-wise, the Triangle is we've got to be ahead of the curve in terms of building.
We are. I mean, we've had record investment in the Triangle and beyond. I mean, I think we've had something like 20,000 jobs added to our area recently. And what that does is that shows that people are moving here, people are making sizable incomes. We know how much it costs to live in the Triangle, and it definitely insulates us further.
So obviously, another thing that we have going for us, all of the universities. Talk a little bit about that, because that allows people to diversify their careers.
It does. I mean, I know that we know in the 2008 recession, that's what a lot of people did. They lost their jobs and they went and got higher education. This is an area where, I mean, you can become a doctor of really anything, or you can get trained in a tech job or in a trade. So the Triangle and just North Carolina in general has so many avenues of education. So people can, and that's something that an economist recommended, Charles Abiziaco at SAU. He recommended that if you do feel like a recession's coming or you're nervous about that, one way to protect yourself is to level up your skills.
And I know you've touched on this a little bit, like putting off your retirement, things like that. Talk about if you had an emergency fund, what do they recommend that look like? I mean, is it 1 month of your salary, 3 months of your salary? What does that look like?
They're saying 3 to 6 months. And I know when you look at that, that's a lot of money. But I mean, there's no time like the present to start saving as much as you can now and just protecting yourself in that way. If you're somebody who has a really stable job, you work in a stable environment, I mean, education is one of them, you're going to be probably okay to do 1 to 3 months. But if you're someone who works straight commission or you just have kind of a job that's a bit more transient, then you should probably get to that 6-month mark at some point.
And make a plan, a budget. That's always a good thing. I hate that word budget, but
yeah,
it's something that you probably need to do if you're concerned.
It is. And it's just about, so much of what they said is about planning ahead. It's not like changing big things or having to make way more money. A lot of people make tons of money and still live paycheck to paycheck because they don't have a budget. So what you need to do is make a budget and just get in the mindset of writing out your grocery list, writing out your monthly spending, not going to 4 restaurants in a month, maybe going to 2, spreading things out, giving yourself something to look forward to, and then by doing that, you're going to lessen the stress because it's really stressful when you look at your bank account and you think, oh my gosh, I overspent. The way to not overspend is to think about what you're going to do ahead of that spending.
Anything surprise you about doing this report? I mean, 12 economists, that's a lot of different personalities, a lot of different opinions.
Yes. And I found that economists have much more of a sense of humor and a spirit than I kind of had anticipated. And one of the things that did surprise me, because I think they're so numbers oriented and they're looking at charts and figures, is Forbes Dixon is a economist with Wake Tech, and he said his advice is spiritual fortitude. So just having trust and faith that things are not going to be as bad as maybe you feel like they are in the moment. And I think we've felt like we're on the verge of an apocalypse at some point in the last 2 years with the pandemic and social unrest, all these different things. So by kind of calming your mind, making a budget, doing things to insulate yourself, but also just kind of having faith that it's not going to be really bad, because when you think that it's going to be really bad, you start to act that way.
You're manifesting it.
You're manifesting it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So having that kind of spiritual fortitude and faith, whatever you need to put your faith in, can be helpful. And I thought that was really interesting and kind of profound advice.
Probably really good advice. Keely, thank you so much for sharing your time and your insight with us on this topic. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. You can also listen to entire WRAL newscasts in podcast form. Find WRAL News Daily in your podcast app. The feed is updated with new newscasts multiple times per day.